Chapter 26, Stinkalicious. The first thing that old George and old Harold did was to run to Mr. Crump's house. Unfortunately, Mr. Meyer was walking down Mr. Crump's street at that very moment in his Stinky Kong 2000 Much suit, blowing brown putrid fog throughout the neighborhood. Old George rang Mr. Crump's doorbell, panicking. Suddenly, Mr. Crump swung the front door open. He'd been at permanent marker off of his face. "What do you people want?" shouted Mr. Crump. "We need help for an old friend," said old Harold, snapping his fingers. Snap! "Well," said Mr. Crump screamed. "Answer me!" Old George and old Harold looked at each other in shock. "It did work!" cried old Harold. They both snapped their fingers this time. Snap, 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 snap. Snap, 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 snap. Snap, snap. "Hey!" Mr. Crump screamed. "Quit snapping your fingers in my face! You weirdos!" Mr. Meyer and his Stinky Kong 2000 Measure suit was getting closer. The whole street shook with every forceful stomp of his magnetic monkey feet. Old George and old Harold continued snapping their fingers feverishly. "Why isn't it working?" cried old Harold as he snapped. "It must be all that water that's on his face," cried old George. "That's got to be what's keeping him from transforming. Listen up, you two psychos!" Mr. Crump screamed. "You better get out of my yard before I call the cops. You're supposed to be adults, but you're acting like a couple of kids." Suddenly, Mr. Meyer stopped. Adults acting like kids," he said, turning his head slyly. He looked at old George and old Harold. His genius brain began to calculate rampantly as he eyed on them down. Then his face widened with a sinister, foul-smelling smile. "Adults who can act children would be humiliating my Riddle Kid 2000 spray," Mr. Meyer said. "So they must be pranksters I've been looking for." Mr. Meyer stomped up at old George and old Harold and grabbed the two friends in the clanging claws of the Stinky Kong 2000.